Question says, the question here says, what would be a determinant of the country's production possibility curve boundary, right? What would be the great? What would be the determinant of a country's production possibility curve boundary? The capital invested in infrastructure, the level of price and wage inflation, the level of unemployed labor, the volume of imports and exports. So out of these things, so basically the question is very simply speaking, if you remember, there is this concept, right? Production possibility curve that shows what is the maximum level of output that a country can produce in terms of two goods, let's say X and Y. So it's asking you that what determines the boundary. So why is the boundary over here and why not the boundaries over here or someplace else, right? So that is what the question is asking for, right? So out of these options, the level of unemployed labor. Okay. Let's check the answer first, Abdul Rahim, but I think the answer should be A. I think the answer should be A. Right, so just a second. So the answer should be A. And I'll explain you why I think it's A. So 3, this is May, June? Yeah, 1, 2. 3 is A, right? So what's the reason for that? So you said the level of unemployed labor, right? So the idea is that unemployment doesn't determine the boundary, it just determines where the country is operating right now. Let me repeat myself. So the unemployment of resources doesn't tell you the boundary of the curve, right? Because this is showing you the maximum production potential, right? On the other hand, unemployment is determined by the fact that where are you operating within the curve, right? So think about this. If you're operating within the curve, this means that there's unemployment. If you're operating on the curve, this means that there is no unemployment because you're using all of your resources. So this will not determine the boundary. It will determine where the country is currently operating. So if you remember, we did talk about that if your production potential increases, your curve will shift outwards. And what's the reason for that? Because you might have developed more technology, and therefore you can now produce more compared to what you were able to produce previously, right? So that's what you need to remember. Right? And obviously, why are the other options incorrect? Because price and inflation has nothing to do with your production potential, right? And the volume of exports and imports also don't have anything to do with your production potential, right? It just shows, PPC just shows how much can a country produce with available amount of resources. So if it can produce more, right? Because you have now more technology, more capital, more infrastructure, then you can produce more, and therefore your output will shift outwards. And similarly, when your resources deplete because you have already used most of your resources or something of the sort, so your curve will shift inwards. That's what you need to remember, right? Does this make sense? Right? So it's how much output you can produce, how much output you have the ability to produce. That's what the PPC shows you. Abdul, is this making sense? Is this confusing? Is this not clear? Okay, very good. Excellent. Right. Now let's move to question 12. So the second question that was mentioned by the student is question 12. So where is that? Okay. Now this says the cross elasticity of demand between products X and Y is negative. The cross elasticity of demand between two products X and Y is negative. What would be the immediate effect of a rise in the price of product Y? So if product Y is getting expensive, what would be the immediate effect on the other good? Right? Right, the quantity demanded of product X will fall, supply of product X will rise, right? Supply of product X will rise, the cross elastic demand will rise, the price of product X will rise. Right, X and Y are complements. Excellent. Yes, that's correct, right? So when the cross elasticity of demand between two goods is negative, that means that these are complementary goods. Okay, now you think the quantity demanded will decrease. Absolutely, that's correct, right? We know that. What are the complementary goods? So if we have to take a real life example, it is the ideal example that I've always given and easy to understand is fuel and cars. So if fuel is getting expensive, people will switch about, people will think about switching to other cheaper alternatives, right? So that is cross elasticity of demand is negative, right? So 12 should be A, 12 is A, excellent, right? Right, okay, perfect. Now the other question was, let me check, I'm looking at my phone, 19. So the next question is 19. Okay. So here's the question. Okay. The question says a country has fixed exchange rate. Okay. Which combination of problems would be most likely to cause the country's government to reduce taxation and lower interest rates? Which combination of problems would be most likely to cause the country's government to reduce taxation and lower interest rates? Demand inflation and bills of payments current account deficit. Okay. Demand inflation and low levels of investments, high unemployment and belts of payments current account deficit, high unemployment and low levels of investments. What do you think? So for which of these four options, the question is asking you that the country would want to reduce taxation. Out of all these four options, in which case would the country want to reduce taxes and lower interest rate? Take your time, no rush, and then let me know what you think is the answer, and then see if that is correct or not. Right, right. Okay. So what is confusing about this? Abdurrahim, what is confusing about this? So okay, let's take it step by step. Let's take it step by step. I get it. What is causing you confusion? Let me. Why am I not? Okay, so have a look at this. Abdurrahim, think about this. So we talked about fiscal policy, right? And we talked about monetary policy, right? And then there's another macroeconomic policy that is supply side policy. But let's talk about these two first, right? Fiscal and monetary, right? So let's first start off with what is fiscal policy. So fiscal policy is about interest rate and government spending. So fiscal policy has two instruments, two components, right? Right. Okay. I'll explain that, right? Okay. Now, the thing is that fiscal policy is about, as I've just said, it's about how much money the government is generating from taxes and how much is the government spending on different projects. So taxes, how much tax revenue the government is generating and how much government is spending on different projects like infrastructure, education, healthcare, blah, 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 right? Okay. Now, taxes, right? So first of all, let's talk about what happens when taxes are lowered. You tell me, when taxes are lowered, we know that aggregate demand is made up of these five components: consumption, investment, government spending, exports, and imports, right? Now, if your taxes are, if the government is reducing taxes, what effect will this have on your aggregate demand? What do you think? Lower taxes mean what? When taxes are low, think about this. So this is the income that my company pays me, gross income. That can be any amount, right? X dollars, X rupees, right? And then out of that, some chunk is taken away by the government in the form of income taxes, right? So some form is taken away by the government in the form of income taxes. So what I'm left with is basically my disposable income. If government is taking disposable income, right? So if government takes, just a second, if government takes more taxes, then I will be left with lower amount of disposable income. Then I will be left with lower amount of disposable income. And therefore, right, there will be more consumption. Excellent. There will be more consumption and the aggregate demand will increase. Now, another thing that we know, now look at this. This is very interesting. Macroeconomics is all interlinked, right? One variable have an effect on another variable, and then that variable have an effect on another variable, and so on. Now, if aggregate demand is increasing, what will happen to your inflation? What happens to your inflation when there is more aggregate demand? Can you recall this? Right? We did discuss this, right? So downward sloping is your aggregate demand, right? Upward sloping is your aggregate supply, right? Where the aggregate demand and aggregate supply of an economy intersect, right? That is where your macroeconomic equilibrium is. Upward sloping is aggregate supply, downward sloping is your aggregate demand. On the y-axis, you have GPL. What does GPL stand for? What does GPL stand for? General price level. And what do we have on the x-axis? We have real GDP. What do we have on the x-axis? Real GDP. Okay. Now, increase in aggregate demand. Now, due to lower taxes, Abdul, do let me know at any point if you feel lost, right? So, due to decrease in taxes, consumption will increase. When consumption increases, we know aggregate demand will increase. When aggregate demand will increase, what will happen? Your real GDP will increase, obviously, because this was your original equilibrium. So this was your general price level, right, initially, and this much was your real GDP. Now, just a second, right? Now, this will become your new equilibrium point. This will become your new equilibrium point where you can see your general price level is increasing, which means more inflation. General price level is increasing, which means more inflation. And your real GDP is also increasing, which means economic growth. Any confusion so far? Right? And what will happen when the real GDP increases? What happens to employment? Will your employment increase or decrease? If there's more GDP of a country, will your employment increase? Right? Very excellent. Right? Same effect. Same is the effect when the government increases government spending. Same is the effect. Why? Because think about this. G is also a component in aggregate demand. Government spending is also another component of aggregate demand. When G is increasing, this component increases. When this component increases, overall aggregate demand increases. When that happens, the same effect happens that we have just discussed. Now, just reverse increases to a certain point. Very good. Excellent. That's correct. Now, Abdul, right, just reverse all these things, right? If instead of decreasing taxes and increasing government spending, the government would have done something opposite. Government is now increasing taxes and reducing government spending. Now, everything that we have just discussed will be reversed. How so? Let me tell you, right? So with higher taxes, we have just explained, higher taxes mean lower disposable income. Lower disposable income means lesser affordability of consumers. Lesser affordability will mean that they will spend less, consume less. When they consume less, aggregate demand decreases. It shifts to the left. When aggregate demand is shifting to the left, right, then your AD curve will shift to the left, right, like this. Let me show you. Right, if this was the original equilibrium, then your new equilibrium would be on the left of this. How? Like this, right? So your aggregate demand curve will shift to the left like this, right? And due to this decrease in aggregate demand, your general price level will decrease, right? It will shift from GPL1 to GPL2, which means your what is that called? Your inflation will decrease and your real GDP is also decreasing, so more unemployment. Right? More unemployment in the country, right? So this is what you need to remember. Now, this is what was about fiscal policy. Now, if we move on and we talk about monetary policy, in the case of monetary policy, it operates the same way. Monetary policy operates in a similar fashion. We'll talk about it in a bit. But the main difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy is that monetary policy is only about interest rates, right? So it changes interest rates. In fiscal policy, you were changing government spending and taxation. In this case, the instrument or the instrument we call, right? So in this case, the instrument that the government is using is interest rates, right? Now think about this. There are two things that the government can do with interest rates. Either you can increase the interest rates, right? Or you can decrease the interest rates. When government is increasing interest rates, Abdul, what do you think? What effect this will have on the aggregate demand? For now, just think about the effect this will have on the aggregate demand if interest rates are increasing. Do you have any idea what kind of effect that can have? So if interest rates are increasing, your consumption decreases. Excellent, right? And your investment also decreases because now it's more expensive to borrow, right? So with that happening, your consumption will decrease, less borrowing by the people, investment will decrease because now it's more expensive to borrow. And again, ultimately, it will have the same effect that we have shown on the graph right now. Your real GDP will decrease, but the good thing about that is that you will be able to control inflation. You will be able to control inflation. On the opposite, when the government wants to boost economy, you will decrease your interest rates. Why will you want to decrease the interest rates? because you want to boost the economy so that there is more consumption and overall GDP increases. So when you decrease interest rates, everything goes in the reverse order. How so? Your consumption will increase, people will start borrowing more, businesses will start borrowing more, there will be more investment. Overall, your aggregate demand increases, everything goes in the reverse order. Your aggregate demand curve shifts outwards, more real GDP and more inflation. Easy? Confusion? Anything not clear? Anything you want to discuss? Anything you want to say? Right? Okay. Now, this being said, now let's look at the third and the last type. Right? Very good. Very good. Now, the third and the last type of policy is supply side policy, right? So, what is supply side policy? It is not about affecting aggregate demand. Supply side policies don't target aggregate demand, right? They don't affect any of the components of aggregate demand. Instead, supply side policy, as the word is suggesting, supply side policies are about increasing the country's production potential. What is supply side policies? Increasing the country's production potential, right? And when that happens, increasing the country's production potential, right? When supply side policies take place, like let me give you some examples. So when government is giving grants, when the government is giving subsidies, when government is training the labor force of a country, all of these policies are targeting to enhance your production, or enhance your supply. When supply side policies take place, your supply curve, aggregate supply curve will shift to the right. How so? Have a look at this, right? So your aggregate supply shifts to the right like this, right? So originally this was your aggregate demand, this was your aggregate supply, right? And now your aggregate supply will shift to the right like this. Now, when aggregate supply shifts to the right, you get two benefits. What are the two benefits that you get when your aggregate supply shifts to the right? So compared to before, have a look at this. Compared to before, this much was your general price level, this much was your real GDP, right? Y1 is your real GDP. Now, in this case, when your new equilibrium is at this point, your general price level is decreasing, which means that you are able to control your inflation, and at the same time, your real GDP is also increasing. Confusion, anything not clear, anything you want to ask me, right? And now the best thing, Elsa, can you hear me? Now the best thing is that what the best thing that you can do to make sure that you understand all of these questions is to practice more questions related to macroeconomics, right? So if you're feeling a little confused about, and then bringing those questions to the classroom so that we can discuss only the problems that you have, right? But this is all the basics that we can do. Okay, Ilsa, did you message me about the questions, right? And you did not mention whether it was May, June, or whether it was October, November, right? So is it May, June exam that you were struggling with, or is it the October, November? Right now we are doing the May, June one, May, June 2019, 12. So 12 we have just discussed. So I'll quickly tell you why. So where was 12? Right, here it is. Right. So is this the same question you were talking about? Yes or no? This should be, right? Walaikum assalam. Right. Yes, do that. Abdurrahim, do that, and focus on macroeconomic questions, and we will discuss those, right? So tomorrow we will have a class around 4 p.m., right? And I'll send you the link and confirm the times, right? So I'll see you tomorrow. Right. Arbab, we are doing May, June 2019. May, June 2019. Elsa have some problems in some questions, so we are discussing those. Where is that? Oh, right. So was this the question? Right. Allah Hafiz. Yeah. Arbab, you can message me on the WhatsApp, and then yeah, I can look at this. Like I can open my WhatsApp and then we can discuss. Okay. Elsa, have a look at this. The cross elasticity of demand between two goods is negative, right? Now, what products have negative cross elasticity of demand? First thing that you have to ask yourself, it's the complementary goods that have negative cross elasticity of demand, right? Fuel and price. Why? Because when the price, right, okay, then it's even better, right? So Elsa, are you following me? So when the price of fuel increases, for instance, what is happening right now, the demand for cars will decrease. So if the price of fuel is increasing, the demand for cars will decrease, right? So there's a negative relationship. Very good, excellent. Now think about this, and that is exactly what the question was asking. What effect will a rise in the price of product Y have? So if let's say product Y is fuel, fuel is becoming expensive, as I just said, the other complementary good, which is X, the demand for that good will decrease. And therefore, the answer is A, quantity demanded of product X will fall, right? If I have to give you another example of complementary goods, right? So, what could be a good example of complementary goods, right? So, right? So, I mean, a good example of complementary goods could be perhaps printer and ink. Very good, excellent, good example, right? So if the ink of the printer is becoming more expensive, so you will prefer not to have your own printer. Instead, you can just go and get it printed from some printer shop, right? And therefore the demand for the printer will decrease, right? So that's how it operates, right? Right, we good, right? Okay, so just a second. So this was question 12. Then the next question you said is 19, 24, 26, right? I'll come to 3 at the end. So you said after 12, we're going to 19, right? Right. Okay. Now, Arbab, let's do these questions first and then 14. Okay, let's do 14 then. If it's in the middle, we can do 14. Which of the following is a transfer payment? What is a transfer payment? Transfer payment is the money that the government is giving to deserving people. Transfer payment is the money that the government pays to deserving people, right? Social security like pension, unemployment benefits, income support programs. Advertising expenditure of a firm, that's not a support. The allowance given by a parent to their child while at school. The allowance given by parent to their child while at school, the rent paid to landlord by the tenant farmer, the wage paid to a worker in the government service. Interesting. The allowance given by a parent to their child at school. I think it should be B. Is it B? Right, government giving to B. Right. Okay, now that was a good example and that was a good question that you brought up, Arbab. Right. Now, can you explain? Yes. Why is it B? Very good. Excellent. Now think about this. Now this is where this gets tricky. Arbab. Okay. How many of these options can you tell me for sure that these are not transfer payments? Out of the 4 options, let's do it like this. Which of these options can you tell me are not transfer payments for sure? The advertisement expenditure of a firm, what has government to do for that? The rent that you're paying for the premises, the land that you're using, that's not a thing, right? So A and C are completely out. Excellent, excellent. Now think about this. The wage that the government is paying to the worker in government service, that is not a transfer payment. Yes, after they graduate, I'm saying, after they retire and then the pension that they get, that is transfer payment. I repeat myself. So think about this. When a government officer is working like during their service, the wage that they earn, the salary that they earn, that is not transfer payment because they're earning the money for their labor. They're earning the money for the service that they provide. That's not a transfer payment. But when they will retire from their job and they will start earning pension, the government will be giving them pension. That is transfer payment. Got it? Makes sense? So that is one thing. Again, D is completely out of the picture. Right, I can definitely. Take allowance. They used a little wrong wording, which they should not have given. Right. By the way, do you know in UK what happens if you have a child? If you have a child, whether you are a wealthy parent or you're not a wealthy parent, the government will give you a certain amount of child allowance every month. Do you guys know that? Do you guys knew this? Right? So this is basically allowance that a lot of times government is giving to the parents, allowance given by a parent, right? So the wording that they have said, they did not want to come across very explicit, right? So they have used very indirectly the allowance given by the parent to a child by the school. So these child support programs, right? Whenever, and this happens very frequently in developed countries, right? right? So yeah, exactly. So Arbab, these child support programs are also transfer payments because you're getting money for nothing. And getting, just because you have a kid, you're getting support because it's government thinks it's their responsibility to make sure that every child gets some basic education, healthcare. I mean, and same happens in Canada. So child support programs are very common in other parts of the world, Western countries, I would say, right? European countries, right? So are you getting me? And this is not a transfer payment. You must have chosen D. आपने D choose किया होगा ना? Right? So pension जो मिलती है लोगों को after they have graduated from government service, that is transfer payment because they are getting money for nothing. Now they have retired. Why are they getting the money? Right? That's kind of unfair, right? But that is kind of social security that the government is kind of, helping them even they have graduated. Sorry, retired, right? But this thing is the child allowance thing is the wording was not appropriate. I totally agree with you, but this is the best answer that you could have chosen. So in MCQs, it's not about selecting the right option. Sometimes the questions can be so confusing, especially the wordings. You need to do elimination method. Do you understand what elimination method is? So I completely eliminated A, C, and D. Initially, do you remember when I was going through it, I even eliminated B. But then I realized that C and D are more incorrect compared A, C, and D are more incorrect compared to B. So then I reached the conclusion that it's B, right? So sometimes there is a trick involved, right? So, okay. Now moving to the next question, 19, right? You said 19. Elsa? Okay. Now read the question carefully and then we will see what the answer is, right? The country has a fixed exchange rate. We know what a fixed exchange rate is. Which combination of problems would be most likely to cause the country's government to reduce taxation? What are you doing? You are reducing taxation and lowering interest rates. So taxes are being reduced and interest rates are being reduced. So out of these four options, what problems would help the government to solve if the government is reducing its tax rates and interest rates? Demand inflation. Would demand inflation decrease or increase? Just answer this question. Would demand inflation, Ilsa, decrease or increase when the government reduces taxation and lowers interest rates? Will demand inflation of the country decrease or increase? Just answer that. No, no, no. Students, think about this, think about this, think about this, think about this. When the government reduces, I was explaining the same thing to Abdul Rahim right now. Think about it, when taxes are less, when the government is taking less taxes, let me explain you from the, again, right? That will increase, right? So why so? Think about this. So I earn X amount of money from my employer. I earn X amount of money from where I work, mega lectures, right? Now, government comes in and government says, hey friend, you have to pay us some taxes, right? So income minus income taxes is my disposable income. This disposable income is the amount that is available for me to spend, right? With this, I can buy, I can spend on food, I can spend on clothes. I mean, basically, technically, this is the amount that is coming to my bank account actually, because this was my income, but obviously the government will come in and take the tax even before it comes to me. So only disposable income is available for me to spend. So when taxes are higher, obviously disposable income will be lower. And what is aggregate demand made up of? It is made up of these 5 components, which you already know, right? With higher taxes, my consumption would be lower, aggregate demand will be lower, and therefore demand for inflation will be lower, right? Does it make sense? Right? So lower interest rates, higher purchasing power, more demand. Absolutely, very good. More demand, price rises, inflation occurs. Very good. Lower taxes mean high unemployment. Elsa, think about this. So no, what you have just written means no. If your wording is incorrect, because think about it, lower taxes will cause high unemployment. That is what you're asking, right? So lower taxes, right? I get your question. Lower taxes will not increase unemployment. In fact, that will decrease unemployment. How so? Let me tell you, right? When people are spending more, because taxes are lower, are you getting me? Then what happens? Have a look at this. Your consumption increase. So if my taxes are lower, right, I will consume more. And because I'm getting more money in my pocket, why not spend, right? So when that happens, your aggregate demand increases. When aggregate demand increases, I was just showing this to Abdul Rahim. right? Your aggregate demand will shift to the, your aggregate demand will shift to the right. When your aggregate demand shifts to the right, now have a look at this. Previously, this was your aggregate demand, the blue line I'm talking about. Now, later on, your aggregate demand shifts from blue line to the orange line because there is more consumption taking place. Orange, pink, whatever you want to call it, right? Now, this was your original general price level where the original aggregate demand was intersecting. Let's make it 2, let's make it 1. Where the original aggregate demand was intersecting with the aggregate supply, that was your original general price level, and that was your original, like, real GDP, right? On the x-axis, you have always real GDP. Then what happens when your aggregate demand shifted outwards because of lower taxes, right? Then your general price level increased, which means that there is now more inflation taking place, but at the same time, your real GDP also increased, right? Your real GDP increased. So that means higher employment. When there's more GDP being produced in a country, what happens to your employment? Your employment is increasing. Is this making sense? Is it making sense? Right. Very good. Excellent. Right. Now come back to the question. Come back to the question, right? So we know when the government will reduce taxes and lower interest rates, people will spend more. Once people spend more, aggregate demand increases and there will be more demand inflation. So there will be more demand inflation. So A can't be correct, right? So this is not fighting the problem that was mentioned. Don't even read the entire statement. Even if you got the first part correct, you can eliminate this. Now for the second part, demand inflation. Again, it says demand inflation, right? Demand inflation will not decrease, it will increase, right? The C part says high unemployment and a balanced current account deficit. Okay. Now think about this. Which combination problems would be most likely to cause the country's government to right? If unemployment is high, right, then you can fight high unemployment by lowering taxes and lowering interest rates. Ilsa, is this making sense to you? Do you agree with me or not? So if taxes are higher, you can fight high unemployment. Sorry, if you lower the taxes, you can fight unemployment. That's correct. But let's read the B part. Balance of payment current account deficit. Now, what is a deficit? More money going out of the country compared to the money coming into the country. So when you reduce your taxes, tell me what will people do? Do you think that they will import more, export more? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? Because current account is mainly, not only, but mainly about the exports and the imports. So if the government is lowering the taxes, what effect will it have on the exports and imports? Import more. Elsa, did you get this? Because again, the reasoning is the same. What is the reasoning? The reasoning is that since people have lower taxes, people are paying low taxes, so they have more disposable income and they can consume more. Right? They can consume more. When they consume more, they import more. Right? So that second problem will not be taken care of. Now the last part said high unemployment. Yes, we do know high unemployment can be fought with low taxation and lower interest rates and low levels of investment. So think about this. When there is a low level of investment and you are lowering the interest rate, when the investment levels are low and interest rates are reduced by the government. So what incentive that gives to the producers? Borrowing is cheaper. Borrowing becomes cheaper. It's how you follow me. So always remember interest rates and investment go in opposite direction. Lower interest rates, higher investment, higher interest rates, lower investment. That's how it works because borrowing becomes cheaper. So the answer should have been D, right? Got it? Okay. Now, if this is clear, we can move to the next question. Got it. Now, the next one that you said was 24. Read the question. Okay, here it is. The diagram shows the imposition of an import tariff. SW is world supply. SW plus tax is world supply after the tariff is imposed. Which statement is not correct? Domestic demand will fall from Q4 to Q3. Domestic demand will fall from Q4 to Q3. Imports will change from Q1, Q4 to Q2, Q3. Imports will fall from Q4 to Q3. Supply of domestic goods will increase from Q1 to Q2. Okay, what do you think is the correct answer? Arbab? Okay, you must have done it. I think the answer is C. The answer is C. Is the answer C? Okay, you got it wrong. Okay. Now, right. Okay, let me explain you. You will not be able to understand it over here. Think about this. Think about this. Students, think about this. Okay, have a look at this. Now just pay attention. Let's first look at the normal demand and supply diagram. Normal demand and supply diagram. Okay. Then you have downward sloping demand curve and upward sloping supply curve. Downward sloping demand curve and upward sloping supply curve. Okay. Right? Easy? Right. Let's do it like this. Perfect. Okay. Now think about this. Without imports, your market will be in equilibrium at this point. Ilsa, above. If let's say this is the total supply of the good in the market in Pakistan, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about international trade at the moment. I'm just talking about the domestic market, right? So S1 is the supply, D1 is the demand. This much will be the price of the good in the market. This much will be the quantity produced in the market. Simple, easy, right? But now we are talking about imports. If in the world market, this is the price. Now here is where it gets interesting. If in the world market, this is the price, right? Students, are you getting me? So PW means price, world market, and W stands for world market. How much will be the demand of the good? Students, think about this. Domestic price was this much. Domestic price is higher than the world price. Are you following me or not? Students, are you following me or not? Right? So if imported cars, just think about it. If local domestic produced cars are 15 lakh and imported cars are 12 lakh, don't you think that people will buy imported cars? Obviously, because that is cheaper. Easy? Any confusion? Right? So at this price level, it is intersecting with your demand curve at this point. So this much will be the domestic demand, right? Let's use the same notation that they have used. So this was Q4 and this was Q1. Any confusion so far? I'm using the same notation that the graph has used. So how much was the quantity demanded by the market at this world price level? Q4. And how much was the quantity supplied by the domestic market? Because this is cutting with your domestic supply at this level, this much. So the difference between this is the quantity demanded, this is the quantity supplied. So there is a shortfall. There is a shortfall. More quantity, let's say, is being demanded, 500 cars, and local market, Pakistan is only making 200 cars. What about the remaining 300 cars? Where will the remaining 300 cars come from? How many of you got me? The remaining 300 cars will come from where? Right? Students? Imports, right? So, Ilsa, did you get me or not? This is the domestic supply for the good in the local market. This is the domestic demand. Like in the local market, how much is the demand for cars? In Pakistan, how much is the supply for cars? This being said, we know that the world price is lower than the price in the domestic market, so people prefer to buy imports. But at this price level, the demand is greater, which is Q4, and the local is producing is Q1. So there is a shortfall, and this shortfall will be met through imports. 300 cars will be imported. Easy. Simple, easy, nothing confusing. Okay, but government want to discourage this. Obviously, government wants to promote local market. They don't want people to buy a lot of imports, right? So government imposes tariff. Whenever tariff will be imposed, tariff will be imposed, so this will become PW plus T, right? So plus tax, right? World price plus tariff plus tariff. World price, which was this original thing, plus tariff. Now, you guys tell me, how much will be the quantity demanded in the market after tariff? After tariff, this is where it is cutting with the demand curve. So this is the quantity that local consumers will demand. And where is this price level cutting with the supply? It is cutting at this level. So this is the quantity that the local market will produce. Easy? Confusion? Ask me. So now the amount of imports in Pakistan will shrink to this much. They will shrink to this much. Previously, how much were the imports? Previously, imports were between Q1 and Q4. Now the imports have decreased from between Q2 to Q3. Confusion? Elsa? Is there confusion? Ask me if there is. Right? Clear? Very good. Right? Okay. Now let's move back to the question. Now let's move back to the question, knowing how the tariff diagram looks like. You tell me. Domestic demand will fall from Q4 to Q3. Did the demand fall? When the government imposed tariff, when the government imposed tariff, looking at the question, looking at the diagram that we just looked at, right? Did the domestic demand decrease when the tariff was imposed? Did the domestic demand decrease or did it not? It did, right? So A is correct, right? Initially, you were demanding, this was cutting at this point. It is such a small diagram. So originally, this was cutting the demand curve at this point. So this was your domestic demand. Then when the world supply went upwards, now it is cutting with your demand at this level. So we do know that the demand decreased from Q4 to Q3. Easy. Imports will change from Q1, Q4. I did tell you. I just told you. Q1 from Q1, Q4 to Q2, Q3. Did I not explain you that? So that is also correct, right? Imports will fall from Q4 to Q3. Did imports fall from? No. In fact, this is the statement that is correct. Imports are not falling from Q4, Q3. No, this is the change in the demand, domestic demand. It's not the change in the imports. The change in the imports were between Q1 and Q4 initially, and then Q2 and Q3. So that's the amount of imports that changed. Supply of domestic goods will increase from Q1 to Q2. Yes, supply of domestic goods will increase between Q1 and Q2. C is the answer. Elsa, you got it? Very good. Excellent. What was the next question? 24? After 24. 26. Just give me a second. Let me cross this off. Okay, let's read the question. A British citizen buys a house in USA which he rents to American citizens in order to receive income for himself. A Britisher has bought a house in USA and he rents to American citizens in order to receive income for himself. Where will the initial purchase and then the rent recorded on the UK's balance of payments? Arbab, do you want to make a guess? Do you want to answer it first? The answer should be B. Is it B? Elsa? Is the answer B? Okay, let's check. 26. 26 is B, right? Okay, great. Now have a look at this, students. Now, think about this. You have three accounts in balance of payments. So you have three accounts in balance of payment. You have current account, you have capital account, and you have financial account. Current account, capital account, and financial account, right? In the current account, you record 4 types of transactions. What are the 4 types of transactions that you record in current account? Trade in goods. Right now, I'm just talking about current account, right? Trade in goods, trade in services, income, and current transfers, right? Trade in goods, trade in services, income, current transfers, right? Trade in services. So this records exports and imports of goods. This records exports and imports of services. Income records rent, dividends, and all these things. Income section in the current account records the income, rent. You're talking about 25th one. I'll come to 25th one after this. And then you have current transfers. What are current transfers? Current transfers are remittance that you receive or aid that you're receiving from other countries. Right? Elsa, are you following me? One way. When there is deflation, GDP decreases. Arbab, are you talking about 25th question in this exam? Okay. So income records the rent, income, the dividends that you receive, right? And the current transfer records the remittance that you receive, right? So there's a difference between rent income, dividend, and remittance. So remittance would be if your parents or let's say any one of your family members live abroad and they send you money back home. That's current transfer. Income, on the other hand, is the money that you generate on an asset. So UK guy has bought a home in USA and he's earning some rent on that property. So for him, for UK, it would be recorded on in the income section because this is the income that you're generating on. This is the income that you're generating on asset. That's not transfer. It's not your family member or anyone sending you money back home, right? Easy. Current, oh, sorry, yeah. Current transfers are one way. Yeah, exactly, one way. Sorry, my bad. Okay, now for the capital account, I did tell you that capital account records, have a look at this. Capital account records what? The sale and purchase of assets. Did I tell you sale and purchase of assets? So if a Pakistani national is buying property in Dubai, you have to tell me, right? If Pakistani guy is buying a property in Dubai, that will be recorded in the capital account I've just told you. But would that be an outflow or an inflow? Would that be an outflow or an inflow? If a Pakistani guy's property, outflow, very good, right? That would be outflow. Elsa, you following me? Because our money is going out of the country. That person paid money when he sells it. Very good, excellent, right? So financial account is not relevant over here, so we'll not discuss, right? So the thing is, when you first buy property, British are buying property in a foreign country. So it is recorded in the capital account and import. So import meaning it's going out of the country. The money is going out of the country because that is what happens in import, right? The money is going out of the country. And then I said that in future, when you receive the rent, that would be recorded in the current account in export section. Got it? Right? Okay, very good. Very good. Very good. Then you said 29 after this one. Was it 29? 25. Okay, let's discuss 25. Right? Yeah. Where's 25? An economy is experiencing a period of deflation. What must be happening? The average price level is falling. The outflow of economy is falling. The rate of inflation is falling. The real value of money is falling. The average price level is falling. Should be A. The real value of money is increasing, not falling. A. I mean, okay. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing. And Bob, I'm getting you, right? Think about this. But what is the main effect of deflation, right? Now you also have to think about Arbaab. So the thing is, I think where you are going wrong at the moment is that you see that the statement is correct and then you just take on that. No. In MCQs, what you have to do, you have to choose the best option out of the four available, right? Now, deflation by the very definition means that it is decrease in the price level. What is inflation? Inflation is महंगाई, right? What happens in inflation? Prices go up. When prices go up, right? So price level is rising, right? PL, price level is rising. Deflation is prices are falling, so PL will decrease. Now, an economy is experiencing a period of inflation. What must be happening? So this option is stronger than the option the output of an economy is falling. Right? Eventually, it will fall. We do know that. Even we discussed that in class, and you're right on that, right? Because producers will not have any incentive to produce, right? Their prices are decreasing. They're making less profit. They are not incentivized to produce more. You're very right. But which of the two options do you think makes more sense? What will be the immediate effect? The immediate effect would be on the falling because that is the very definition of deflation. That's the very definition of deflation. So it's very important that you see what the options are, right? And then choose the better ones, right? That's how you should be doing it. Okay, so after this, Elsa, another question. It was 29. Which one? 28. Okay, 28. Where is 28? Here it is. A country with the balance of trade deficit raises interest. So you're raising interest rates, and there's a trade deficit. Okay, very nice. How may this help to reduce the deficit in the short run? Okay, by increasing the inflow of foreign direct investment, in direct investment is not recorded in the that will not affect your exports and imports. Right, by lowering the foreign exchange rate, by reducing the level of aggregate demand, it should be D, right? Right, we can do that. So let's do 28 first, then we'll do 27, 29, 30. So read the question, students. What do you think is the correct answer? So what is trade deficit? Ilsa, trade deficit is only about the exports and imports. What is trade deficit? Trade meaning trade, right? What is trade? When you buy and sell, that is what trade is, right? So trade deficit means exports of goods and services and imports of goods and services. These are the only two things it's talking about, right? So listen to me again, right? So it clearly said that there's a trade deficit. It did not say balance of payments deficit. There's a huge difference between balance of payments when it is talking about all the transactions in balance of payments, right? In the case of trade, it is only about the exports and imports. It's only about the exports and imports, right? Now, the thing that you have to remember here is that the thing that you have to remember that you have to see what is happening for exports and imports. So if it says by increasing the inflow of foreign direct investment, you don't even need to think about it for once even, because that is not about exports and imports. It's about investments. We are not interested in that. Okay, by lowering the exchange rate, when interest rate rises, it should be when income decreases, people will spend less on imports, so they will consume more exports. Right. So the B part above might not always be true, but the A part is absolutely correct. When people think about this, one way that the government fights its deficit on trade, one way that the government fights deficit on its trade is by increasing the interest rates. By increasing the interest rates, right? Ilsa, think about this. So that makes borrowing expensive. So that makes your borrowing expensive, right? And therefore, this is known as expenditure. This is known as expenditure dampening policy. What is expenditure dampening policy? In expenditure dampening policy, the government increases the interest rates and increases the taxes so that people have lower affordability. I did tell you right now that, when there are higher taxes and there are higher interest rates, people borrow less and they have less spending power, right? Therefore, they will also be spending less on imports. They will also be spending less on imports. So when imports decrease, your deficit will be controlled. I'm not saying it will go away altogether, right? But at least your imports will decrease, right? Now, coming back to the question, right? So by lowering the foreign exchange rate, when interest rates rise, generally exchange rates also rise. When interest rates rise, people find your country more lucrative option to invest. So they will bring your money, they will bring their money from their own countries to your country. So the demand for your currency will increase, and usually higher the interest rates, higher the exchange rates. Do remember this relationship. Higher the investments, higher the interest rates, sorry. So think about this. When interest rates are higher, right? So foreign investors get a better return. So they will want to invest money in your country. When they do that, they will be demanding your currency. When they demand your currency, exchange rate will appreciate and it will not depreciate. So this statement is not even correct, right? Now, by raising the level of domestic capital investment, again, investment is not recorded in trade. Investment has nothing to do with trade. Elsa, are you following me? And what Arbab just said, that higher, and what I explained you, that whenever taxes are higher and whenever interest rates are higher, people have lower spending power. When the spending power is less, their demand for the goods is less, right? The demand for goods is less, and even the demand for imports is less. Even the demand for imports is less, right? So that's how it happens, right? So just give me a second. I'm sending you the new link because this will expire and then we'll complete the remaining questions. And then I'm sending you the new link right in the group right now.